A lot of times people run the story that they've been victimized by a trauma. But trauma is a label you give something that you've chosen to see only the downsides to. That's all. If I asked you, what are the upsides to it, spiritually, mentally, career, financial, family, social, and physical, and stop you from running the story and being a victim of history and allow you to be a master of destiny, you can take anything that your mortal body has experienced and turn it through the love of your own soul, you might say, and see how it's on the way, not in the way.
Hey guys, when we first got sick, when we first started getting all these scary, debilitating symptoms, so many of us were told that either it was all in our head or that there was no option for recovery, that this was our life now, that we were just going to have to learn how to live with it. And those messages were devastating, are devastating. And thankfully, they are wrong. And today's guest is here to show how to let go of those limiting narratives and what you need to do to reclaim your health and your life. And if you're tuning in for the first time, I'm Raelan Agle, and the conversations you'll find here are not about accepting defeat. They are about discovering what genuinely works for recovery. So we listen, we explore, and we embrace strategies from those who've truly healed. And today I'm excited to be joined by Dr. John Demartini. He is a globally respected expert in human behavior. And while some of you might know him as a renowned speaker and an author, you might not know that his journey started in profound hardship, experiencing homelessness and diagnosed dyslexic and labeled as incapable of learning or ever even being able to read. So how did he rise from that adversity to now reading over 30,000 books and counting and authoring over 40 of his own books, all while inspiring audiences worldwide? Dr. Demartini is here right now to share the turning points that transformed his life, explain why so many of us can stay stuck in patterns of limitation, and show us how we can create profound change with our emotional health and our physical health, all from the inside out. And before we dive in, a quick interruption. I just want to make sure that you know about all of the recovery resources that I have available, because I don't talk about that a lot here. So know that 99% of what I share and make available is completely free. It is online in various formats. I send out weekly emails summarizing the recovery interviews and have hundreds of videos on this channel packed with valuable insights, and it's all accessible to everyone and for free. However, if you'd prefer to save yourself some digging, you might be interested in my online recovery program. It's Brain Retraining 101 for ME/CFS and Long COVID recovery. It delivers everything you need to know straight to the point in bite-sized pieces so you can spend just a few minutes each day gaining the tools to propel your journey forward. In Brain Retraining 101, you'll learn the brain science behind recovery and get the best tools that I've come across for brain retraining and nervous system regulation. But here's where the magic really happens. We have multiple group coaching calls each week hosted by myself and also other amazing coaches who have gone through Brain Retraining 101 and fully recovered themselves. And these group calls are your chance to show up in a space where everybody truly gets it. People support you and are there for you on the challenging weeks. And then also there to cheer you on when you celebrate your wins, like finally being able to wash your hair, or maybe you've started even driving a car again. And you can ask your questions in real time and get the support and the recovery insights that will propel you forward on your recovery journey. Or you can show up and just sit back with your camera off and just listen and soak it all in. So if you're looking for and ready for some extra support for your recovery, you can check out the link in this video's description to join the program or just to learn more. And I really hope that I get a chance to meet you in one of our group calls. And now the incredible Dr. John Demartini. Let's dive in. Dr. Demartini, it is such an honor and a pleasure to meet you and have you here talking to our guests. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you. I was looking forward to it. Pardon my delay getting here, but I tried to rush, but I made it.
Oh my goodness. I know just before we hit record, I said, looking at everything that you do in your life now and in the past and all that you've accomplished, I said, it doesn't even seem humanly possible. I said, do you ever sleep? Yeah. All right. So much to dive into here. Really excited to get your perspectives on, so many of the things that we talk about here on the channel. We know many people watching are facing recovery from chronic health conditions, and we talk about a lot of things that go into that recovery journey that are very much aligned with the work and your background that your professional background. But I'd love to start out because I know you've shared that your personal life, in the past, growing up, played a significant role in the work that you do now. I'm sure people would appreciate people who don't know your story. If you could tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. Um, I was born in Houston, Texas in 1954. So I'm 71 in a couple of months. And
Oh, wow.
I had a speech impediment and a deformed arm and leg and had to wear braces and had to wear strings and buttons in my mouth as a child. I was told in first grade that I would never be able to read, write, communicate effectively, probably not go very far in life or amount to much. In first grade, I left school at a young age and became a street kid, but I could stand on a surfboard. So I went on to be a surfer. I eventually made my way to hitchhike to California when I was 14, and then to Mexico, and then off to Hawaii when I was 15, and rode big waves on the North Shore. Got in some surf movies and surf books at the time, and then nearly died at 17, going on 18. And that, in the recovery of that, I had an opportunity to meet a really amazing man named Paul C. Bragg. Probably somebody out there has probably heard of Bragg's amino acids and Bragg's
Yep.
nutrition and things. Well, that gentleman, one night in 1 hour with one message, impacted my life significantly. After listening to him speak, he made kind of by what he said, it made me think that I could someday overcome my learning problems and someday become intelligent because didn't read till I was 18. Till after I met him, I first started reading. And I only made it through elementary school by asking smart kids questions, which I'm known for today on my questions that I ask. And I had a health problem. So that night, I had a dream to become a teacher and a healer and philosopher. And I wanted to travel the world and I wanted to share my research, whatever I could learn, whatever I was able to learn, I wanted to share it with people, like this man did for me, because he really inspired me one night. And that was 53 years ago, coming up in November. And that's pretty well all I've ever wanted to do since. I haven't stopped in the pursuit of that ever since. And the very thing that my teacher told me I would never be able to do is what I end up excelling in. So once I learned to read, I didn't read till I was 18, but once I did, I just never put books down and been blessed to read 31,000 books now. And I've written, at least 300 books and traveled over 21 million miles in flight and about 1.5 million in sailing. And amount to much, she said, I don't amount to much. I'm now 55 times financial independent. And I've been able to communicate to billions of people around the world. So the very thing I was told I would never be able to do became the very thing I ended up being inspired to do. So I wish I could say thank you to that lady. I've done it in my mind, but I never got to see her because she was up in age when I was 7, 6.5, 7. So I never got to thank her. But the thing she told me I'd never do is what I ended up becoming excelling at.
That is absolutely incredible. And I'm thinking about our listeners and our viewers as well. So many of them are told that they are stuck in their circumstances. They've got a condition, they will never get past it, they will never get better. You need to learn to live within these limitations. And people come through it, they become empowered, they take charge of it, and they do get past it. And it sounds like that was the moment for you as well. Something really empowered you to just take charge of your life. Can you share what was said to you that shifted things?
Well, he stated he was so, I guess, enthused and certain about what he was saying. And Jack LaLanne, who I don't know if anybody who remembers Jack LaLanne, but Jack LaLanne was a health enthusiast in the last century. And there's about 50 major players, including Donald Trump, crazy Donald, was a student of this guy. And I got to be a student of him. And he said that we have a body, we have a mind, and we have a soul. And the body must be directed by the mind, and the mind must be guided by the soul in order to maximize our human potential. And he said that when we set goals, we want to set goals for ourself, our family, our community, our city, our state, our nation, our world, and beyond. for 100 to 120 years. And then he said that what you think about, what you visualize, what you affirm, what you feel, what you write down, what you act upon becomes your destiny. And even though that's simple stuff, I was at the right place at the right time to get the right information for me to have a shift. And he told us about the 7 doctors, about Dr. Sunshine. Make sure you get adequate morning sun and evening sun. We call that now UVA, and we now know we have biophotonic stimulation from the sun, and it causes dissociation of water molecules and is a source of energy that looks like it's happening in our body. Doctor Exercise, make sure you're moving all your joints, which is why I took up yoga and taught yoga for many years, to move all your joints and to exercise. He said, drink real natural water, fresh water, and breathe deeply, kind of like a pranayama, and have a mental attitude that's balanced and not extremes. And he said, and be inspired by something, a highest value thing that you're absolutely to be inspired by, that you feel like you have a mission that you want to create a legacy around, and educate yourself on the highest priority things that are most meaningful, inspiring to you on a daily basis to doctor the mind. So he went through those, and I just started incorporating those into my life, and my life started to shift. And I ended up going back and taking a GED, which is high school equivalency, because I never finished high school. I ended up miraculously guessing and passing. I eventually failed my first class in school, and I almost gave up. But my mom said to me when I came home, she saw me crying. She said, "Son, what happened?" I said, "I blew the test. I got a 27. I needed a 72 to pass. I got a 27 on my first test trying to go back to school." She said, "Son, whether you become a great teacher, healer, and philosopher and travel the world like you dream, or you return to Hawaii and ride giant waves, or you go back to the streets and panhandle as a bum, which you've done." I panhandled as a kid. And so I just want to let you know that your father and I are going to love you no matter what. When she said that, I just had this unbelievable determination come over, and I put my hand into this determination fist. And I said to myself that I'm going to master this thing called reading, studying, and learning. I'm going to master this thing called teaching, healing, and philosophy. And I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm going to travel whatever distance. I'm going to give pay whatever price to give my service of love across the planet. And I'm not going to let any human being stop me, not in myself. And I went into my room and I got a dictionary out, and I made a commitment to memorizing 30 words a day. And I recited them 20 times and put them in a sentence and spelled them and put the meaning to it. And I overcame my dyslexic symptoms. And my mom would test me on 30 words a day until 2 years later, I had 20,000 words. And I went from the bottom of the class to the top of the class. And it just really, and I've never stopped learning. I just love learning every single day of my life.
You have such a powerful story from, what you went through in childhood. It's just absolutely incredible to see all that you've accomplished, and how you had every reason to stay as a victim or feel that there were these limitations that would keep you from achieving things, but it seemed to just determine you and fuel you even more.
Well, the night I met Paul Bragg, I saw a vision of what I wanted to do. And if you would like, I show you somebody painted it. Can I share it with you?
Please.
Let's see if I can find it real quick. So this is, I saw myself walking through a stoned archway where there's men on either side, walking out onto a balcony overlooking a giant square. And it's about 40 feet up above the square. And I looked out, and as far as I could see, there was 1 million people. And in the background, there was an iconic building from every major city around the world. And I shared this in Melbourne, Australia, this story in Melbourne, Australia, and there was a famous painter that attended. And he came up to me afterwards and he asked, "Can I paint your vision? I'd be honored to paint that and like to send it to you." And this is what he painted. If I could unplug it here.
Oh, wow. How incredible.
Is it clear? I don't know if it's clear.
Yeah, yeah, I can see it. That's amazing.
So
That's
the
stunning.
name of the painting is "A Man with a Mission with a Vision." A man on a mission with a vision and a message.
I love that. And I'm sure that's absolutely inspiring for the people watching who often feel stuck and like they have insurmountable hurdles ahead of them that they don't see how they're going to get past it. And one of the reasons I was excited to have you on the channel here is that I know that you have nearly 5 decades of studying human behavior and the mind body connection. And we talk so much here on the channel about this because it's tied into recovery we're seeing for many of these chronic conditions, how much the mind impacts the body and vice versa, and our nervous system and our emotions and our behavior. So it's probably a big question because you've done a lot of work around this, but what would be some of the insights or some of the more impactful things that you've learned about this that you think would be relevant or helpful for people facing these chronic health conditions
I
through
love
this?
that question. We got a couple months.
Please bring it on. We
Um,
need all the learning we can get.
every individual, regardless of age, background, gender, spectrum, or whatever, lives moment by moment by a set of priorities, a set of values. And this unique fingerprint specific value structure or hierarchy of values that they have impacts how they perceive, decide, and act. So your perceptions, your decisions, and actions are a result of what those values are. It is not what happens to us out there. It's how we perceive them, what we expect, how we perceive them, what we decide to do with them, and how we act from them, more so than what happens to us. A lot of times people run the story that they've been, you know, victimized by a trauma. But trauma is a label you give something that you've chosen to see only the downsides to. That's all. If I asked you, what are the upsides to it? Spiritually, mentally, career, financial, family, social, and physical, and stop you from running the story and being a victim of history and allow you to be a master of destiny. You can take anything that your mortal body has experienced and turn it through the love of your own soul, you might say, and see how it's on the way, not in the way. So asking people quality questions that make them conscious of what they're unconscious of. Because when they're saying something is traumatic, they're unconscious of the benefits and opportunities that are there. They're only thinking of the downsides. And if I ask them and hold them accountable to see the other side, they can transform the entire perception of trauma into opportunity. If I put a person's hand on a table and put their hand out, put their thumb out, and hit it with a hammer and slammed it really hard with the hammer, they go, ow, what the heck? What are you terrible person, you mean person. And they would immediately assume that that's in pain and that's suffering and that's they're a victim of it, etc. But if I offered them $1 billion cash, gave them the home of their dreams, and had them find their soulmate, and gave them enough stacked up advantages and benefits with that slam, people will say, slam away. So if they perceive more advantage and disadvantage out of it, it won't be called trauma. It'll be seen as opportunity. So we have the capacity to ask quality questions, to become fully conscious of the two sides that every event has, and allow ourselves to go from challenge and trauma and terrible and torture and, tragedy, and find out the other side and see that there's opportunity sitting there, and there's actually in that moment an opposite. And whenever we're under extreme perceptions of the downside, our brain will dissociate and create an opposite by a law of contrast through perception. And we have access to that through our intuition. And if we know how to ask the right question to access that information, we can neutralize it right on the spot in the moment that it's happening. So instead of being victim of history, they can be master of destiny by the quality of their life. The quality of the questions they ask dictates the quality of the life that they have. Now, if a person is run down and constantly seeing challenge and not seeing support and opportunity, their mitochondria, they're going to go into their amygdala. Their amygdala is going to want to avoid the challenge and seek the fantasy. They're going to shut down their mitochondria. They're going to go into a cell danger response, get out of their executive center where they can see strategic planning and opportunities in it, and trap themselves. And if they run and dramatize the story and tell people about how that was terrible and how they were damaged and how they were hurt and everything else, they'll just prolong the deterioration and entropy of the body and run the body down. And with all of those polarizations of perception, the autonomic nervous system is then polarized. you have autonomic dysregulation, you get epigenetic impacts by methylation or acetylation imbalances, you get transcription impacts, you get structural and functional protein impacts. Your physiology is going to create symptomatology as a feedback to try to get you to see the side that you're ignoring in the moment that's actually trying to liberate you from this first initial perception of trauma. And if you can ask the questions and balance it all out, you can change your physiology, change your psychology, change your epigenetics. Your body is unbelievably resilient and adaptable no matter what's going on. And this is what Paul Bragg basically was trying to say. There's nothing your mortal body can experience that your mortal soul can't love and can't transform.
It's fascinating because I actually just got back last night from a conference in Boulder, Colorado that was put on by the Association for the Treatment of Neuroplastic Symptoms, so symptoms caused by the brain, the autonomic nervous system. And what you're saying would have fit right into any one of the talks that was put on there. It was definitely a theme about, if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, that it's not so much about what happens to us, it's about the meaning that we assign to that.
That's it.
And so if this is the case, then what does this then mean for people that want to shift this? Is it as simple as just changing the meaning? How does one take this information and use it for their benefit?
Can I share maybe a couple stories to help it?
Yeah, please.
So I had a gentleman who was in his 40s, and his mother was sick, and his siblings was there with his mother, and he was in a different city. They called him and said, I'm not sure if mom's going to make it the next couple of days. You might want to get here. I think she's getting close. Well, he had a very big business meeting the next day, didn't want to miss out on. So he planned the schedule to fly to see his mom that afternoon. When he woke up the next morning to go to the business meeting, his mom passed away that night. So although he did the business meeting and that was productive, he felt kind of regretful or shamed or whatever because he didn't make it to see his mom before she died. Now, I didn't see him for 4+ years after that, but he has been beating himself up, feeling shame, feeling guilt, feeling depressed, angry at himself, creating an autoimmune skin condition, and having difficulty sleeping with intrusive thoughts, because extreme pride or shame or extreme infatuation, resentment creates intrusive thoughts that make you fear the loss of that you're seeking or fear the gain of what you're trying to avoid, and causes insomnia. Insomnia is a normal feedback system to let you know you have an imbalanced ratio of perceptions. So he comes to the breakthrough experience, which is one of my signature programs that I teach. And there I introduce my methodology, the Demartini method. And I asked him, so let's go to the moment when you found out your mom passed away, because that's the moment. Up until then, you were on a roll, you were getting ready to have a business transaction, you figured, okay, I'll get there on time, but you found out the next morning that she passed. The moment you heard that, you started feeling guilty, shamed, because you now compared yourself to an ideal about what you should have done, could have been, da-da-da. And whenever you compare your current reality to any of those unrealistic expectations and fantasies, you're going to kind of beat yourself up. So I said, so what was the benefit to your mom that you didn't make it? And he goes, how could there be a benefit? I didn't make it. I didn't get to see her before she died. Mm-hmm. I said, well, you're assuming that that's a negative. But what would be the benefit to you that you didn't make it? I can't see any. I don't know. I'm blind. Anytime you see any event that you're conscious of the downsides, not conscious of the upsides, or conscious of the upsides, not conscious of the downsides, you're not fully conscious. You're ignoring some of it. And you have entropy, not negentropy, which is life physics, which is healing. And so I asked him, what's the benefit? And he just goes, I don't know, I can't do it. And then I asked it in reverse. I said, if you had made it and did not do the deal and left that night and made it to her, what would have been the drawback? I just reversed the psychology. And all of a sudden he stopped and he got teary-eyed. And he said, wow, my mother died in my sister's arms. My mother and sister had not talked for years. My mother did not want to die until that was resolved. My sister was ornery and blaming my mom for some things and was just ridiculously angry at my mom. And I was kind of against her on my mom's side, thinking this is ridiculous. But when she found out mom's about to die, she realized it's better to get this off the chest. So my mom died in my sister's arms, which is, I know, my mom's last will. That was the one thing. I'm absolutely certain that I loved my mom. I'm absolutely certain that my mom loved me. There's no doubt in there. But if I would have come there and gotten there the night before, my mom would have died incomplete with my sister, and my sister would have been incomplete. And that was the perfect thing, that most important thing that she wanted to resolve before she died. And I would have interfered with it if I'd gotten on that plane that night. And my mom kind of lived vicariously through me, and I've done extremely well in business. And I've helped fund things to help her go through this last year. And she would want me to live my life to the fullest now that I see it. And then I said, now you can see the benefits of not making her. And now you can see it. The tears of gratitude, the heart opening, the release of the shame and guilt, literally in 7 days, cleared up the skin condition. The energy level was unbelievably changed as of that day, that moment. The energy went back up. The anger at the self, the resentment to the self, the shame at the self, and all this stuff, because of the moral hypocrisies about how you should be, ought to be, supposed to be, instead of looking at what actually was the benefit. So he chose to see the downside for 4 years plus, until I asked him the question. The quality of your life is based on the quality of the question, Jess. If you ask the question, you liberate yourself from the intrusive thoughts of an incomplete awareness. And anytime you have a valency, the amygdala assigns valency to the hippocampus and stores it as an episodic memory, which we used to call the subconscious mind. And the moment we have an imbalanced ratio of perception and we store that, we have reverberating positive dramatizations, polarities sitting in there, false positives, false negatives, subjective confirmation bias, subjective disconfirmation biases. We distort our reality with an imposter syndrome of exaggerations or minimizations of ourselves, and stop ourselves from being authentic and having autonomic regulation and normal physiological responses that we call wellness, wholeness, well-being, eudaimonia, whatever we want to give the name. So by going in there and asking that question and holding him accountable, he liberated himself from that shame and guilt and resolved the issue with his sister, got closer with the family dynamic. Then I took him through another step. Now that your mother has passed on, what specific trait, action, and actions do you perceive your mother displayed or demonstrated you admired most and now missed most? And we itemized them, and then we found out who has emerged in your life to fill in the gaps, because nothing's missing. At the level of the essence of the soul, nothing's missing in our awareness. At the level of the senses, things appear to be missing. The reason they appear to be missing is because we're too proud or too humble to admit what we see in others inside our own self. And we have deflective awareness instead of pure reflective awareness. And we're not intimate with the self-reflective universe that way. So I basically had him go in there and find out who provided the new mom's traits in his life. And he saw there were 3 women in his company that started to play out part of his mom's role. I mean, it was really quite amazing. One used to send him stuff and start sending him stuff for cooking, and one would keep an eye on him and see how he's doing, and the other one was calling him, and he saw the mom in a new form. And then we cracked some of the fantasies of the mom and the infatuation of the mom, and found the benefits of the new form and dissolved any form of grief that was sitting there that was unnecessary. So now he's resolved that. His energy level's back on. He looks in his facial expression younger. His vitality is back on track. He's more purposeful instead of amygdalic, you might say, which is basic survival. He's now in thrival again. And that's because we asked the right question. And when you're in your executive function, in your higher levels of the brain, and you have self-regulation, you're more likely not live to eat, but eat to live. You're more likely to have ghrelin and leptin and insulin and glucagon and the hormones that regulate dietary patterns brought back into balance. And then we could just go on and on and on with the impact it has on blood sugar and physiology and heart rate. And I mean, there's no doubt that our body is creating signs and symptoms to guide us back to our authentic state where we love and appreciate our life and are doing what's important and priority and what's really authentic to us. It's guiding us.
We talk a lot about authenticity and alignment here on this channel and how it impacts our emotional health, our physical health. So, I mean, what does that look like? So, like, let's say right now I'm watching, I have long COVID, and you're telling me I need more authenticity and alignment to feel well. Like, what do I do with that information? What does that look like?
The autonomic nervous system impacts pro and anti inflammatory cytokines. And if the autonomic nervous system is not brought into balance, they can be accentuated and retarded. And long COVID has a lot to do with those distortions via autonomics through the immune system to prolong the signs and symptoms. And if we have a fantasy, unrealistic expectation about how life's supposed to be or how we wish it would be or whatever, and we're not honoring the way it is, that in itself can cause a sympathetic dominance, which can shut down our immune system to some degree, our acquired immune system, and can, in a sense, lower our vitality. The mitochondria, when we're in the medial prefrontal cortex, the mitochondria levels go up, multiply, and we have more oxidative phosphorylation, ATP generated. When we're not, and we're frustrated, and we're not doing what's really meaningful to us, it goes down. So anytime we're doing something that's really high on our values, that really is inspiring and prioritizing our daily life, our energy levels go up. And we heal from the long COVID much more effectively if we prioritize our life. If we're not filling our day with high priority actions that inspire us, and we're not delegating lower priority things that burden us, we're not going to maximize our autonomic regulation in our executive center. Because when we're doing high priority things, the blood glucose and oxygen, according to functional MRIs, goes into the forebrain and goes in the medial prefrontal cortex and self-governs and uses glutamate and GABA to bring down the volatilities and vicissitudes of the autonomics and the amygdala's valency. So you can literally maximize your vitality and transform the long COVID if you prioritize your life and delegate lower priority things and get clear about what it is that's really important to you. Many times we inject the values of outer authorities and subordinate to outer people and try to live in the shadows of other people instead of standing on the shoulders of them and honoring that what we admire in them we already have in our own form, and honor what is really truly important and meaningful to us. And the second our body rallies around that and returns to normal physiology. So on my website, I have a value determination process. It's about a 30-minute thing. It's free for people if they want to go on, drdemartini.com. They can go on there and fill that out and then ask themselves, what is the highest priority action I can do to fulfill that? And start prioritizing your life and living by priority, and stop giving power to other people on what's stopping you from doing it. Because there's nobody stopping you. Everybody in the world is projecting their values onto you, trying to get you to live in a world that they want you to live in. And, if you want to make a difference, you can't do it unless you stand out. You can't fit into everybody else's and conform to them and expect yourself to be vital and inspired and productive. So giving yourself permission to stand out in a world that wants you to be different, wants you to fit in, is a key to revitalizing physiology. And long COVID is really a symptomatology trying to guide you back to priority. I mean, because I've taken people on, quote, long COVID, that's the title they've been given, and we prioritize their life, and their energy levels start going up immediately. And all of a sudden they realize that they have more command over their physiology than the labels we'd like to give people. I'm literally about labels we put on things. I'm more inspired by the power we have inside that transforms physiology. I'd rather give people their power back.
Yeah, that's definitely something we're seeing here because we have people coming with tons of labels, to this channel, to these recovery stories, to these experts, whether it's POTS or MCAS or long COVID or chronic fatigue syndrome or fibromyalgia, chronic pain, IBS, a whole host of things. And yet it's the same path that is helping so many people get past it and really
Absolutely.
just letting go of those labels.
It's
Great
prioritizing
thing.
your life and prioritizing what you eat and prioritizing what your daily routine is and prioritizing the people you associate with, prioritizing what you feed your mind. This is what Paul Bragg taught me when I was 17, a week before my 18th birthday. And I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to meet him that day, because my trajectory of my life shifted. I mean, I had strychnine cyanide poisoning at the time, and I was pretty sick. I had 3.5 days unconscious. And this one gentleman that one night had an impact on me. And I've taken it the bull by the horns and taken and run with it now. But the more you study the beauty of physiology, and the more you study autonomic function, the more you study homeostasis and negative feedback loops in the brain, the more important it is to prioritize your life and to give yourself
Yeah.
permission to be you. The magnificence of who you are is far greater than any fantasies you'll put on it. And we keep putting fantasies because we compare ourselves to other people. And the law of contrast of comparison with other people and putting people on pedestals or pits will make us put ourselves in pits and pedestals, which is inauthentic. And then we create symptoms that are trying to let us know that that's not who we are. That's the imposter. And our imposter creates symptomatology to try to guide us back to authenticity. That's the key. That's where our most resilient, adaptable mind, and that's where autonomics and our immune systems rally. And it's so easy. If you study the immune function, you can see exactly that it's trying to teach us that. Very, very, it's not even a debate. It's clear. It's the seventh sense. It's trying to evaluate your microbiome. It's evaluating your external environment, your internal environment, and it's trying to offer that to maintain homeostasis. That's the objective, or at least allostasis. And it's attempting to maximize human potential. The signs and symptoms are feedback to help us maximize our life, misinterpreted by the palliative approach to healthcare instead of the awakening approach to healthcare.
I'd love to hear something else. I understand that you've written in a gratitude journal for 50 years. And I bring this up because we talk about gratitude a lot as well, and how it can shift your whole lens of life. It can impact a dysregulated nervous system. So, what has made you be so consistent with this practice? And what are the benefits as you see it from doing this?
Well, I was told I was born on Thanksgiving Day. That's a start. My mom,
This is a start.
my mom, right before I was 4, when she was putting me to bed, she said, "Be sure to count your blessings. Those that are grateful for what they have, that more to get, they get more to be grateful for." So that became sort of a theme. But I have over 9,000, it's almost 10,000 pages of gratitude. And that's
Mhm.
1 inch margin print. Every single day I document. When I get off this, you'll be on that list. I had the opportunity to be interviewed by you on your podcast, and I document everything I get to do, the people I meet. I mean, whatever that was inspiring, things that some were planned, some of them were things I didn't expect, but I document every single day. So I have the largest collection of anybody I've ever met. And what that does is allows you to see life on the way, not in the way. It allows you to have something to be grateful for on a daily basis that you can compare, what you get to do. I mean, if I look back at my life, I've had the unbelievable amount of blessings to meet amazing people, go to amazing places, do amazing things. And I really believe it's because that gratitude journal is part of that. I mean, I wouldn't take the time to do all that if I didn't think it was productive and meaningful and inspiring, and it documents it. And it allows me to metric all the things that I have gone for and dreamed of and worked towards, and metric what I am accomplishing. So it's a measuring system and a documenting system. And without a doubt, when you are grateful, there's two types of gratitude. There's a superficial gratitude when things seem to be supporting you, which is kind of a parasympathetic one. And there's another one where things are challenging you, and then you discover how it's serving you, and you get the aha moment, the gamma synchronicity in the brain, a eureka moment when all of a sudden you see the hidden order in the apparent chaos. That is the one that I document. That's the one I want to see every day. I want to make sure that, because if I've asked millions of people speaking, how many have had tears of gratitude, tears of inspiration, those moments that you just have a knowing there's something special and meaningful, pay attention. Everybody in every country I've spoken 161 countries, all the people there know that state. They know it. I said, that's a confirmation of authenticity. That's like when you have a parasympathetic, you move towards a delta wave sleep with 3 cycles per second. You go towards a sympathetic, you go towards a beta wave, which is 13 cycles per second. If you put them into perfect balance, you get a alpha theta junction, which is around 8 cycles per second. The moment you get into perfect balance, a gamma synchronicity and a gestalt integration of the brain synchronize the firing as a confirmation that you're now authentic. And it's letting you know you're now just healed. You just had a transformation right there. Living day to day and maximizing the frequency, duration, and intensity of authenticity of moments It's one of the most powerful healers I know. And that's grace. That's grace and
And
gratitude. That's where maximum resilience, adaptability, and authenticity all occur. So yeah, that's healing. That's why I wrote a book, Count Your Blessings: The Healing Power of Gratitude and Love. That was an earlier book in 1997.
wow. Yeah, it's challenging to see it at first when you haven't spent much time thinking about this or learning about this, but things like authenticity and gratitude are directly related to your nervous system and are going to impact how you feel.
Exactly.
Authenticity really is, I like to think of it as, or inauthenticity, that's a mouthful, but going through life with a bunch of masks. Like I have to wear a mask to pretend that I like this job that I have, or that I'm happy where I live, or that I'm fulfilled in this relationship, or perhaps you don't feel like you're enough. So you have to put on a mask of who you think people expect you should be in the world. And this is just, it's got your threat assessment systems, on high alert. Like things are not okay. Things are not okay. And when you bring in things like a gratitude practice, like a while ago, this was a few years back, but I started to notice that my husband and I sat down for dinner every day and dove into conversations about complaining about the day, like, oh, so and so at the office was so frustrating and traffic was horrible. And so we shifted it to a gratitude practice. So when we sat down, we had to share our top things from the day that we were grateful for. And when you know that you're doing this, you start having a bias towards gratitude as you move through your day. It's not just that moment. You're like, I know I'm going to have to come up with these things to say. So let's start looking for what's good in the
Exactly.
day. And what better message for your nervous system that everything's okay? I mean, if you're being chased through the forest by a bear, you're probably not going, I'm so grateful for this moment. Like your nervous system's like, something's not right.
Well,
But when you're feeling gratitude,
you could be, because you may have been
you could be.
procrastinating on your workout routine, and this one got you to work out.
I don't think I'm a big enough person to have any sort of gratitude in that moment. I think it would just be terror. But
Well,
yeah, something tells me you could be
I
chased
always
by
say
a bear and
anything you're not grateful for is your baggage. Anything you're grateful for is your fuel. You decide. If you take any
I
part
love
of your
that.
life and you can't see, that's what I do in the breakthrough
I
experience.
love that.
That program, there's nothing your mortal body can experience your mortal soul can't love. There's nothing. I mean, I've seen the most amazingly challenging stuff that people have faced. I could list them, but you'd be probably almost vomiting some of them. But I assure you, you can find the other side to it to the same degree as you see the terribles. There's the terrific. There is a way of doing it. And sometimes the other way around. Sometimes people are gullible and infatuated and fantasizing, and they're way off in the pixies, and they need to be grounded by the other side of the equation. So I'm not just finding the positives to the negatives. I'm also finding the negative, the positive. I'm trying to bring them both into balance. Because if they're not balanced, you can't expect a balanced physiology. So it's
Yeah.
basically our intuition is trying to whisper whatever's unconscious. And whatever's unconscious is the thing that we're ignoring in the awareness that every event has two sides. And if we're choosing not to see it, it's because we've chosen not to see it. It's not that it's missing, nothing's missing. And if we accumulate the wisdom to go in there and find the other side of things and not be externally evoked by stimuli that are misinterpreted, but actually spontaneously acting. Whenever we live by our highest values, the spontaneous action potentials in the ventral medial prefrontal cortex comes online. And that's where we get the most gamma synchronicities. So spontaneous action without resilience, it's kind of like Occam's razor that if we use in propositions and we're trying to make decisions, if we take the simplest form, that's where we get the simplest discernment to be able to take spontaneous action, where you're not complexified by indecisiveness and uncertainties. You have maximum certainty. And where maximum certainty is, maximum healing occurs.
We haven't even touched on this yet, but I know you have developed the Demartini method. And I'm wondering if you could share an explanation. Could this be helpful to support someone who is facing a long COVID diagnosis or chronic fatigue syndrome?
1,000 cases.
Yeah.
Look,
Okay, so tell us
at
about
least
that.
1,000 in the last 5 years. So,
Wow.
so
So, what is the Demartini method? Well, let's assume that at least some of our viewers are not going to have any understanding of what that is.
okay. So
What does
let's
that look
say
like?
you walk in a mall and you're single or married, acting single, and you meet somebody that's attractive, and you're now a bit infatuated and look up to him, and you're seeing and perceiving, you're assigned with your amygdala a valency of positive, and you create an impulse to seek. It represents prey, and you want to consume it and get close to it. You're blind to the downsides. You're ignoring the downsides. You're unconscious of the downside. You're conscious of the upside, but you're unconscious of the downside. Like Michael Douglas and Glenn Close in Fatal Attraction. if you maybe remember that one. So in your unconscious of the downside, your intuition is trying to point it out. Your intuition is trying to say, you know, there's got to be a reason this is occurring. There's, don't rush into this. Don't be gullible. Don't be, take your time, be patient when we have that. But we are now blinded by the upsides and blinded from the downsides with a bias. And we're there because we want to get our adrenaline strong enough to capture the prey and to capture this person that we admire. In reverse, we can also resent somebody and be seeing the downsides and not see the upsides. And biased in our interpretation, subjectively interpreting things with false positives. False positive on the positive, false negative on the negative, or false positive on the negative, false positive on the negatives and false negative on the positives. And we can distort our reality and create these valence states and create these emotional dramas and these polarization states and these emotional vicissitudes that are unstable and be blind by an unconscious part. The Demartini method is a series of very precise questions that I've been building and working on and refining for over 52 years now on helping people see what they're unconscious of. So it's a very precise set of questions. For instance, you meet somebody you're very resentful to. You ask the question, what specific trait, action or inaction, do you perceive this individual displaying or demonstrating that you dislike or despise most? And you pinpoint what exactly did they do. It can't be hearsay. It can't be broad, vague generalities like abusive, because that didn't tell you anything. It can't be how you felt from their action. It has to be their action. And you identify that. Then you go to the next question. Go to a moment, me. You're talking to yourself now, or if I'm facilitating, I'm holding you accountable to answer this question. Go to a moment where and when you perceive yourself displaying or demonstrating that same specific trait, action, or inaction that you had despised and disliked in this person. When you're pointing your finger, you got 3 pointing back. Because in Romans 2:1, it talked about whatever you judge in others, you've done the same thing. Pluck the mote out of your own eye before you pluck it out of others. Because we only resent things on the outside that represent parts of us on the inside that we feel ashamed of, that we've dissociated from and covered it up with pride and defense and blamed and projected onto them instead of looked within. And that shame inside that we're projecting outward with resentment is causing an autoimmune attack on our physiology. And that's part of why we have autoimmunity and heteroimmunity around them. We get sick to our stomach when we're around them. And so we go in there and identify where we did it, when we did it, who we do it to, who perceived it, us doing it, until the quantity and quality is equal. Now, I've done that on probably 250,000 people. And have yet found anybody that, unless they ran out and refused to do it, which is occasional, like 1 out of 10,000, I haven't had anybody that couldn't own whatever they see. Reflective awareness is healing. It leads to a true intimacy when you realize that whatever you see in others you have is a true intimacy. People confuse intimacy with a sexual attraction, which is not real intimacy. It's actually a fantasy meeting another fantasy and another person. So once they identify it, their judgment on that individual calmed down because they're no longer too proud to admit what they see in others inside them. They now realize whatever I see in them, the seer, the seeing, and the seen are the same, and they level the playing field. Whenever they're too proud, they look down and resent them, their sympathetic nervous system comes in and methylates, cuts and shuts down the transcription process, causes the little micro tubules and everything else to move materials away from the nuclei for transcription and mitosis and out to the periphery for defense, and we stop our cell growth process. And we get stuck in a daytime response without having recovery at night. And so our physiology is creating symptomatology that we can identify and measure because of our perceptions of non-ownership. Then if I go to the moment where and when you perceive this individual displaying or demonstrating the trait that you disliked and despised and resented, and go to that moment, the actual moment of perception where our conscious splits from unconscious and divides and judges and activates the amygdala and puts us in this valent emotional burden, this intrusive thought state. The second we do that, if we go in there and now ask, what's the benefit to me of them doing in that moment? Because there's a benefit side. If we choose not to do it, well, we're a victim of history. If we look and find it, we transform it. Now, I've taken, like I said, 250,000 people personally through that process, and I've yet to see anything somebody's gone through they can't find blessings to. Enough to bring enough benefits to balance the equation, to bring a tear of gratitude and a confirmation of authenticity. Because now you're not putting them down and you up, you're leveling the playing field and you're putting them in your heart. And when you heal, when you love somebody, you heal. You transform your physiology and you have true grace because now you see the hidden order and what the perfection of what they did. And in that moment, instead of playing victim, instead of blaming and running drama stories and telling your therapist that, this person did this and dramatizing that, you now say, you know what? This was my teacher, and my addiction to the opposite behavior, of whatever they did that they resented, is the reason why it's so painful, is because I'm addicted to the opposite. And my addiction to the opposite behavior is what's drawing in that harder behavior into my life to break the addiction. So there's another question in there. Now go to a moment when you did this to the people you did to, and how is it a benefit to those people? So you're dissolving the shame that you have and the autoimmune response, because when you dissolve the shame you have about your own behavior, you don't get resentful to them because you've done the same thing and there's no shame about it. And then you realize they're a human being and we're all going through that. We all do those behaviors. Then we go over there and then ask the question. This is 5 out of 80 questions. Then we go to the next question and said, now go to a moment where we perceive the same individual displaying the exact opposite behavior. And that's mind-blowing for people because people believe they're the labels they put on people. They're always mean. No, they're not. They're nice at times. When you support their values, they're nice as a pussycat. You challenge their values, they can be mean as a tiger. So you go in there and ask them, so where and when did they display the opposite behavior to you until they come into balance? And then you realize that they're a human being, an individual. And if I do take the time to think about what their values are and communicate and help them fulfill their values, they treat me one way. And if I don't, they treat me the other. And they're letting me know that I'm not respecting in their values. I'm projecting my values onto them and expect them to live in my values, which is futile and unsustainable. But if I can appreciate them and respect them, I will care enough to know what their values are and communicate what I want in terms of what they want. And win-win. And then we can have some appreciation, love. And then we realize that the label was in the way of loving. Then I go in there and ask again, at the very moment the person was doing this, who is doing the opposite in your life? Because the mind will not allow you to perceive things without contrast. All phenomenal sensory perceptions depend on contrast. So I make them aware of when they're resenting somebody, who are they infatuating with that's doing the opposite? And their addiction to that is what's drawing that predator into your life to try to break your addiction to the opposite. Because if you get addicted to the fantasy, you stay juvenilely dependent and don't grow. When you get the challenger that's challenging you that you resent, you start to become precociously independent and grow again. So you need that individual in your life when you're addicted to fantasies. And a lot of our moral hypocrisies are promoting fantasies in the world that are leading to some of our illnesses. And then I go and ask the question like I did with that guy who had grief. Now go to a moment where and when they perceive this, you perceive them demonstrating this trait you resented. And in that moment, if they had done exactly the opposite, the way you hoped they would have been, what would have been the drawback? To crack the fantasy that they were comparing the person to in the first place. If they go in and find the downside to that, they start to appreciate the person. When they do, they realize that the trauma that they thought they had was an incomplete awareness, and with the right questions to make them fully conscious, they can actually transform whatever had happened to them into something of grace. And their physiology, immediately responds with transformation. Changes in skin, changes in digestion, changes in microbiome, changes in autonomic. The body is amazingly quick in responding when we balance out our equation. Anyway, that's 7 of the questions of the 80 questions of the Demartini method.
So in these interviews, I always try and, finish off with something simple, because many people going through these health conditions, they have cognitive symptoms. It can be brain fog. It can be a lot to take in. And I want to ensure that people aren't left feeling more overwhelmed and stuck. And sometimes it's helpful just to have something simple to start with. So is there something simple, one thing that you could recommend that someone watching or listening right now could do today? Like, what does this mean for me today? What should I do right now with all of this amazing information that you just shared?
Well, let me address brain fog, and then I'll do that so I can get 2 birds in 1 stone. When you're infatuated with somebody, you can barely sleep at night because they occupy space and time in your mind with fantasies. If you resent somebody, they occupy space and time in your mind and intrusive thoughts with nightmares. The reason being is because one is symbolizing prey, the other one's symbolizing predator at the amygdala level in the subcortical area of the brain. So the moment we actually have these imbalanced races of perception, the noise in the brain and the brain fog is nothing but the accumulation in the hippocampus of these episodic memories that are valent and charged and emotionally back and forth, black and white. So by prioritizing your life, the blood glucose and oxygen immediately goes into the medial prefrontal cortex. The medial prefrontal cortex uses transmitters to balance out the amygdala and calm it down and regulate it. So the autonomics come into regulation when you prioritize your life. So prioritizing the life is one of the simplest, most significant things they can do to start the healing process and to regain their energy, to clear the mind, to become more effective and efficient, and to reduce the probability of all the noise and all of the blaming games that play on. Because we're now being accountable and reasonable in that state. Our expectations are more reasonable. When we exaggerate ourselves, we set too big a goal in too short a time frame to humble us. When we minimize ourselves, we set too small a goal and too big a game time in order to ruminate and come up with strategies to get more authentic. But when we set real goals in real time frames, we have less noise. The second thing is to ask counter questions. You know, just like if you put money in the stock market and it goes above the mean, you're paying over amounts for the price, and it looks like it's going up, but it's actually has a downside because you're overpaying for the stock. When it goes down, it looks like a bad thing, but you're actually buying stock cheaper. So in actuality, no matter what the market's doing, you're still dollar cost averaging and getting a return. In your life, it's no different. Your life is following the same thing. When you're up or down, when you're up, you're blind to the downsides. When you're down, you're blind to the upsides. Train yourself and discipline yourself to ask for the counter perspective and stabilize your own mind. I was in my practice many years ago, and I'd have a big day, and I'd see a lot of patients. They'd say, "Oh, thank you, Dr. Demartini. I had made some good income, and I was thinking I was special or whatever." And I'd come home and I'd get nailed by my wife. She'd bring me back down. She was doing exactly what a wife's designed to do, bring me back into authenticity, because I was puffed up and arrogant. And if I had a down day, she would lift me up. She was bringing me back into equilibrium, but I was not savvy enough 40-something years ago to see it. And I was addicted to one side. So what I started to do is, before I would leave the office, I would ask, when I was up and I was feeling proud and I was feeling egotistical and arrogant, I'd ask, what clients' names did I overlook? What procedure did I forget to do? What paperwork did I not fill out? What staff member did I not thank? What anniversary or birthday did I overlook? And I calm myself down from my own arrogance as a self-governing exercise. And then if I had a down day, I reversed the questions and I found out what I did do, and I stabilized myself, and I kept metrics on the practice growth. And as I started to do that, the practice growth was more stable and steady, and I made the most return. And I had the most stable relationship with my wife. And I didn't have volatilities and bipolar responses going on in my psyche. So I use self-governance. So if you are seeing the downs to things and you're feeling down, look for the upsides. If you're up, look for the downsides. Bring yourself into homeostasis, which is what your intuition is attempting to do it, and all the physiological negative feedback systems in the brain is attempting to do it. If you ask questions that equilibrate the mind, you liberate yourself from the intrusive thoughts, the difficulty sleeping, and you stabilize your function. By living by priority and stabilizing those polarities, you're doing an amazing job at transforming your physiology. And you may have more power to heal yourself than you realize.
Amazing. I know this is a lot for people, but you also have a lot of information and resources available for people who want to learn more, for whom this is resonating. So tell us, for people watching and listening, where can they follow more of your journey? What do you have available for them?
If they go to drdemartini.com, they can go and do the value determination. It's 30 minutes of their time. It's free. It's private. I promise you it's worth the time taken. We've got people all over the world using that. It's a very useful tool for identifying what your life is really committed to. Because if you ask people, I've been doing value determinations 47 years, and Most people don't know what their values are. They think they do, but your life demonstrates your values. What you say and what you actually live are two different things in many cases. So take the time to do that. On that website, there's a plethora of information available, radio, television, newspaper, magazines, podcasts, information available for people. It's complimentary. And there's also, if there's interest in coming to a live presentation or find out what I'm doing online or whatever, it's also available. So I just say go to the website. That's the easiest place to start and take advantage of the value determination process and learn the Demartini method. Anybody who learns that will apply it the rest of their life. I have people, I had somebody the other day that's been doing it 41 years and, they're still using it because it's such a practical tool on how to bring yourself back into homeostasis when you've been perturbed by illusions of the outside world.
Amazing. And this, of course, will all be linked in the video description. So I encourage people to take a moment and go and check out the incredible resources that are there. Dr. Demartini, thank you so much for being here today. I just really appreciate you, the work you're doing, and that you took some time to chat with us today.
Thank you for your great questions. And if they need to slow down the video to listen to me, because I tend to get going. Listening to me is like drinking from a fire hydrant, so that's okay.
No, amazing. People can always go back, watch parts again. That's the beauty of YouTube. And I'm going to link a video here too that just walks through some strategies for nervous system regulation for people who are looking for, some simple, specific things that they can use. Thanks again. Thank you to everyone who's watching and listening. And I hope to see you in this next video.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.